Hi everybody, Tex-Mex here. Thank you for joining me for another video. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Smith & Wesson M&P Shield 380 EZ. This is a pistol I bought a little over a couple of years ago. I'm telling you, this pandemic has made my frame of reference for time kind of wacky. So I know I've had it. I purchased it before they came out with other chamberings for this, because since then they've come out with this in a 9mm and with the new Federal Super Carry cartridge. I think it slightly defeats the purpose of why they created this firearm in the first place, but let's get into it. First, let's check the gun. The chamber is clear, magazine is empty. So the 380 EZ is a delayed blowback 380 ACP pistol, which makes it a soft shooter. And the difference between a delayed blowback and I guess they also refer to it as a recoil operated, and just a direct blowback system is this. And to show the difference, I'm going to demonstrate with the Walther PPK. Now this one is not in 380, it's in 32 auto, but for our purposes here, it'll basically show what I need to talk about. Let's check it. So nothing in the chamber, nothing in the magazine, and actually I'll leave the magazine out for now. So I'm going to take it off a safe because we know it's empty. For a delayed blowback system, I need the hammerback to be able to show this a little bit easier. But for now, let me put it down. For a delayed blowback system, when a round fires, the firing pin hits the primer and the bullet fires, immediately a projectile starts coming out with a bunch of hot gases, and there's pressure coming out the barrel. Well, as physics dictates, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So there's also pressure pushing the slide back. And the goal is to make sure that the projectile and the gases leave the barrel before the casing comes out of the chamber, or else you're going to have a bunch of gases come back at you, and you're going to lose a lot of the power in the round being propelled out. So the moment the gun fires, the slide starts to get pulled. Here, this is where I need to pull the trigger back. The slide starts to get pulled back. So you fire the round, and the slide, well, let's do it this way since I'm blocking the camera that way. The slide starts to come back, and eventually the casing comes out. So if you see here, there is no guide rod on this pistol. Basically, the barrel is the guide rod, because the barrel is not connected to the slide in any way, shape, or form, other than the spring that is here above the barrel, or on the barrel, basically, that gives the proper tension to allow the slide to stay in place just long enough to let that projectile leave the barrel. So the issue with that is that as you get stronger cartridges in here, you have to put stronger and stronger springs to keep the slide from flying back too quickly. And it makes for snappy shooting pistols. Direct blowback pistols tend to be relatively snappy. I used to have a Sig P230. I ended up getting rid of it at one point. I sold it to fund a different project. I liked the pistol, but it was very snappy, and I had already moved on to different carry concealed options at the time. This I inherited from my father, so I would never sell this pistol, but it's a great way to demonstrate the blowback system. Now, I do have a friend who has a Sig P230, and when we go to the range, I'm going to take that out there to compare with the 380 EZ. So that's how a direct blowback system works. Now, the delayed blowback, or recoil operated, oops, sorry there, guys, the recoil operated system, the difference is that the barrel, and once again, let's check it. It is empty, nothing in the magazine, nothing in the chamber. The difference is that there is a small connection between the barrel and the slide. So the same thing happens when you fire this round. Gases and projectile come this way, pressure starts going that way. But in the beginning, for just a short period of time, the slide and barrel are connected. So not only does that add a little bit of weight that assists, so you don't have to have as strong of a recoil spring, but it gives you a little bit of more time before the chamber is going to open and you have to worry about gases coming out. And let me show that here. You can see as this starts to come back, for just that little bit there, you can see it, the barrel and the slide move together. and then eventually the slide and the barrel separate and the barrel begins to tilt, as it is for all recoil operated pistols. Most of the barrels tilt up. I think there may be a couple that tilt down, but most of them tilt up. And another difference, as you can see, it has the guide rod. Since the barrel cannot act as the guide rod on a pistol that has a recoil system, you have to have a separate guide rod. So that assists in the sense that you don't have to put as stiff of a spring in there. So suddenly you have a 380 semi-automatic pistol that has a lighter spring. And that is great for shooters who may have problems with their hands, arthritis or weakness of one sort or the other, because it makes this slide really easy to manipulate. This is super simple, which is nice for somebody who has problems with that, as well as not feeling as much recoil when you actually fire the pistol. Secondly, as far as manipulating the slide, it has these little protrusions here, sort of like the HK VP9. If you've seen one of those, the ones they have are a little bigger, but these are protrusions that are on both sides. And that does help in grabbing the serrations here and pulling back. So in that respect, it really helps shooters with issues with their hands. As well as that, it is easy to disassemble. It's very much like a Sig in that respect. It's not a striker fired, although it looks like a striker fired pistol. There's actually a hammer in here, and I'll show that in a second. So one of the things about disassembly, excuse me, is that since it's not striker fired, you don't have to pull the trigger to strip it. So like a Sig, you want to have the slide all the way back, take the magazine out, and then you have the little lever here you pull down, and then you release the slide, and there you go. So there's your frame, here's your spring, and there's your barrel. So very easy to take apart and not that hard to put back together either. The only tricky part in putting it back together I have found is that this has a grip safety, and we'll talk about that in a second as well, and you can't have the grip safety pushed as you're putting the slide back on, so you have to kind of hold it a little differently to make sure that you're not actuating that grip safety. Pull it all the way back, and then close the lever, and boom, you're ready to go. So very easy slide to manipulate, easy to disassemble. It's got external safety. This one has the ambidextrous, so on the left and right, 1911 style, where that's safe and locked, and that is ready to fire. Oh, and I didn't bother to show you the hammer, so let's do that here real quick. We'll disassemble it again. So unlike the striker fired, you can see right there, here's the hammer. So when you pull the trigger on this, you have a hammer that comes up. So it's not a striker fired. So that also helps in trigger pull in the sense that you're not having to put any tension on the spring when you pull the trigger. You're just basically releasing the hammer. So let me put this sucker back together real quick. Okay, here we go. So that gives it a good trigger. And actually what we can do right now really quickly is test the trigger. Since I've enjoyed making these videos, I've decided to go ahead and invest in a trigger pull gauge. And let's see what this one's at. I believe they advertise it as being around 4.5 pounds. Now this is kind of awkward because I have to make sure to actuate the grip safety. But let's check it here. Let's see here, 4 pounds, 3.8 ounces. Let's do it again. £4, 2.3 ounces. So yes, it's a very light trigger, a relatively light trigger, a good trigger, heavy enough to be a decent self-defense firearm. So the grip safety is obviously just another added safety since it doesn't have that trigger type little blade that many of the striker fired pistols have. You do have to be holding this pistol firmly in your hand to be able to pull the trigger. And it's not a problem. I've only fired a couple of magazines through it so far, only because I don't have a lot of 380 ammo. I basically have under a box left, and I'm trying to save it to go to the range to do the comparison between this and Sig P230. But that being said, it did shoot well, and it was quite the smooth shot. Another thing that sort of assists is that you can move the rear sight really easily. Oh, and of course you have a loaded chamber indicator there that some people don't like those, some people do, but for a new shooter, those can work very well. But moving the rear sight is actually very easy. And once again, I need to take this apart so I can show you that. There's a little screw right there. There you go. You can see it, that little screw right there. So it's an Allen head. I believe it's an Allen head or potentially a hex screw. But all you have to do is loosen that, and then you loosen up the rear sight so you can move it left or right for windage, and then just tighten it back up. So that makes it very, very easy to change the windage on this pistol. As for loading the pistol, you can see the magazine here. It is a single stack magazine. They made it easy to load as well. They put these little thumb studs on the side so you can pull it, the follower down as you load rounds into it. And even the spring, it's a relatively light spring. It's not that hard to compress. I have some 22s that have these little thumb studs, and they are much, much harder to compress than the 380 EZ. So yeah, that helps a lot. And there's not much more to say. I mean, it's a light pistol, polymer framed, very safe. You have the external safety. You have the grip safety here to keep you from accidentally firing it. Very easy to manipulate, soft shooting. I understand why they made it 9mm. Obviously, 9mm is easier to find, and some people are going to want this pistol in a what they may consider a more effective cartridge. Although I think with modern 380 loadings, 380 is coming into its own. However, the more potent you make the caliber, obviously the more recoil you're going to feel. There are already a lot of recoil operated 9mm out there. So the only benefit you'll get at that point is the easier to manipulate slide and things of that sort, which still there is a lot to be said for that. So let's head out to the range. I'm going to compare it with my friend Sig P230. I'll shoot them side by side. Like I said, I've only put a few rounds, a couple of magazines through this. I've got about 3/4 of a box of Winchester White Box 380 ammo left. I need to find some. That's very hard to find in the stores right now. But we'll compare them, see how they feel, see how they shoot. Admittedly, I have a lot more experience with the Sig just because since I had the P232, I put many rounds through that back in the day. And this one, I've only put a couple of magazines through. But from what I recall, it was very easy to shoot and relatively accurate. So I'll also do some slow-mo just to see if we can see any differences in the recoil operation and muzzle flip. See if you can tell when I do the slow-mo of that one is less snappy than the other. So let's head out to the range and have some fun. Here we are at the range to do our comparison. We're going to shoot first a Sig 230 on loan from a friend of mine. We're about 10 yards from the target, and we loaded it fully with, I believe, 7 rounds. Seven rounds. European release. I can say that felt a little snappy. I'm always surprised at the 380 and how snappy it is. And now let's try the Smith & Wesson 380 EZ shield. It's got 8 rounds. Oh, failure to eject. We'll just go ahead and put that one in manually. Take one more shot. Well, we're going to give that one more go. I loaded 7 rounds back in this magazine. I can tell you, after loading this magazine and the shields, the EZ magazine's 10 times easier to load than these. So in that respect, it really does help. And I'm shooting Winchester White Box. It's an older box, a 380 auto I had. I can't find a lot of 380 auto on the shelves right now, so this is what I needed for this comparison. Ouch. Yeah, this is snappy, and I'm getting a tiny bit of slide bite. In fact, I started anticipating the shot and had to stop myself from pushing forward. So, I mean, not a terrible group for self-defense purposes, but it is not pleasant to shoot. Now, the 380 EZ. And now let's take a look at our targets. It looks like I shot the Smith & Wesson a little better than the Sig. The 380 EZ, certainly I was able to keep more on center. I was pulling a few to the left. The Sig P230, I was pulling up and to the left a little bit. I actually have more experience with the Sig, although this one was on loan. I used to have a 232 years ago. It was a pistol that I carried concealed for quite a period of time, so I have more experience with it, and I forgot what a snappy round it is. In a blowback, it's very snappy. I will tell you, Smith & Wesson knocked this one out of the park. The EZ is that recoil operation makes the 380 such a soft shooter that it really is. If it's going to be for a new shooter or somebody that doesn't want a lot of recoil, that may be recoil averse, this pistol is night and day from this one. This one was not very pleasant to shoot. This one was great. I could get the rounds off quicker. I didn't feel the recoil in my hand as much. It's just, I think for a new shooter, whoa, they're going to prefer that quite a bit. You can see the wind's picking up. So as far as the ammunition, like I said, I was using Winchester white box. I haven't put that many rounds through the 380 shield, which is maybe why it had a hiccup. It's older ammunition. I wish I could find more 380 on the shelves, but I can't. So it did well. I certainly was, if I was going to use it for self-defense, I'd pick a certain type of ammunition that I was going to rely on, fire, 50 to 100 rounds through it, make sure that they ran completely through without a problem, and then I would feel very confident carrying it. And the Sig 230 as well. It's a great pistol. I would carry it as well, but it's just way too snappy. The Sig 365 isn't as snappy as this pistol. So anyway, let's do a little bit of slow motion so we can see, compare the pistols side by side and see if we can really see a difference between the blowback action and the recoil operation.